Emily, in her opening remarks, said it's far too early to talk about winners and losers. We're only at the beginning of this information war. However, right at the beginning, one of what seemed to be the winners were people like Vladimir Putin and Hu Jintao. They were relishing, they were crowing at the Americans' discomfort, and particularly what was perceived by many to be a voluble, or in some respects a hysterical response from the US administration to the first revelations, with the point being, here are you guys proselytizing about how great the internet is as a democratizing force, and as soon as something happens that you don't like, you shut it down. That's open season now for authoritarians around the world to cite the American example and to clamp down. Is that the sense you get in Moscow, that actually it's played into the Kremlin's hands?
At the moment, but I think I should return to the point about who might be harmed by this cable, because sometimes the differences are how the same information might be presented. For example, it's not prohibited in Moscow to have a contact with American ambassador or have some stuff in the American embassy. And everybody, including Russian security services, they're clearly aware that there are some meetings and global things like celebrations in American embassy or British embassy. The problem is that if you see, for example, the name of a particular journalist and the cable published there's some words about confidential, the same information might present it as, maybe we have to limit this journalist and his contacts with some people in government. And that would be the problem. Okay, this particular journalist would be not prosecuted for disclosing some state secret because he has no access to state secret. But it might pose some problem for getting information from Russian officials. And that might be the case with the cables.
There's one thing to restrict their access. Are you aware of any Russian journalists or activists or others who have come to harm as a result of the revelation so far?
I know that there are some discussions, yeah, but
that's conjecture. You don't have any evidence, or do you?
I just don't. I can't name the names.
Emily, I just wanted to ask you this point about the American response and where that leaves the debate. You were in DC earlier yesterday about, as I was on Monday for World Press Freedom Day, brought by the State Department and UNESCO, and it was a very good set of sessions that I was party to. But Wikileaks seemed to be the elephant in the room. Nobody particularly wanted to talk about it, and there seemed to be this strange mismatch between the discussion about the internet in North Africa and the Maghreb as the great democratizing tool, and yet at the same time the debate has now come to controlling the internet.
I thought this really goes back to my opening remarks about that there are much bigger issues here at stake about the control of the internet, about things like net neutrality, which actually are dull and long-running and seem policy-heavy, but are absolutely kind of the beating heart of whether or not we will have a free press in the 21st century in the same way that we understood it beforehand. And you're right that, actually being here, it was very interesting having come from the UK and being here for the first 3 or 4 months when the story broke, because there was a sense, I felt a very heavy sense in which it sort of electrified debate around what the role of the press was in the US, particularly coming out of the decade when, under the banner of national security, most newsrooms felt somehow cowed or pressured into possibly being more sort of censorious than they would have been before, and this is something that one hears from American journalists, and it's certainly something one hears from the consumers of American journalism, which was that there was a real sort of, the job of the press is to hold power to account, and it's not always clean, it's often messy, sometimes there are unfortunate consequences, but that's the operation of democracy. And I think Wikileaks did actually come up in the panel at World Press Freedom Day, but you can't, America and indeed, every democracy has to think, how do we frame our policies around the web, interconnectivity, access to information, in relation to being a free and open society, because I think that bit is actually sort of in danger.
I think this is really interesting, because one of the methods was not legal that people resorted to when the tranche of cable started to be released. It was actually down to economic censorship, preventing Wikileaks having money from MasterCard and Visa and PayPal, and that was hugely effective. And also having a denial of service attacks, which again were very effective. And I think that those two things, which are, if they were operated in a totalitarian regime, would be decried, but actually are the methods of censorship which were perhaps the most effective. And I think that there's a policy thing around that. Is that
There's a lot of things being thrown around here. The United States government did not interfere in any way with the internet and the reporting of these cables. I had conversations with journalists about offering perspective on sensitivities where real lives were put at risk, but at no time did we interfere with the ability of the New York Times, the Guardian, the Washington Post, others. The moment that these 251,000 documents got to these news outlets, we knew that there was going to be reporting. And from that point, we were doing our due diligence to alert governments, alert citizens about what was coming. But no one supports the role of journalists in civil society more than the United States. This is fundamentally not about internet freedom. It's fundamentally not about freedom of the press. It's about the magnitude. It is about how technology makes it easier, going back to the example of leakers in the past, where they might have a folder under their arm, handful of documents, might be passed to the government, might be passed to a journalist, but it was very specific, one issue, one relationship. We have to understand the implications where 251,000 documents touching on virtually every relationship that this country has with every other country around the world with which we have diplomatic relations has somehow been influenced by what's happened here. It is the scope and the breadth of this that we just have to understand. I agree with everyone who said we need better security, but the idea that we can push out this volume of classified information and believe that there's been no impact or no harm is foolhardy in my view.
Do you believe the U.S.
One more.
Yeah.
The United States government did not tell MasterCard what to do. MasterCard made its own decision. If you're aware of a conversation between the United States government representative and these private firms that made their own business decisions, I'm happy to learn about that.
The part of the alarming thing is that I wasn't saying that the United States government has censored the internet. Quite the opposite. That actually it sort of runs on a commercial timetable, and these are business decisions which could quite legitimately be taken by any commercial operator. But it highlighted how, when you have critical issues of information and information flow, that there isn't a public space that has First Amendment protection. That's something that we learned, that we should have known, that we learned, and it was demonstrated through Wikileaks.
This isn't